Hello and welcome to It's a Net, Not a Harpoon, Why Ransomware Threatens Even the Smallest Businesses. My name is Nathan Austin and I'll be guiding you through the presentation today, and Stephanie Kingsley is producing behind the scenes. Thanks for joining us today. Today we are going to hit on some quick takes. In general, 4 nets, 1 harpoon, following the theme of this topic, why it doesn't matter if you're a target. That's one of the common things that we hear from different small businesses, is that they don't think I'm too small to be a target. I'm not a target. Well, the reason why we wanted to have this session today is explain there's only one of the key ways that ransomware attacks that is where you are an actual target. The other ways, it's just a big net that you could get caught up in. So that's why we said we're going to talk about 4 nets and 1 harpoon. Secondly, why paying the ransom will most likely not help. There's actually evidence out there that paying the ransom, you might get lucky and get the encryption keys, but there's other evidence out there as far as why paying the ransom won't help. So if paying the ransom won't help, and if you do get caught in the net of ransomware, well, what are some things you can do to recover or enable a recovery from ransomware? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Those are the quick takes. Real quick, 1 minute about MyTech. We are not a training company. We are a business and technology consulting organization that over the 21 years we've been in business, we've developed a proven IT strategy that we know can achieve consistent, reliable, predictable results for our clients. It's not the only IT strategy. It's just the one that we've learned that works for us. And we've basically built our entire organization around it, and the roles and the training and education, et cetera. So ultimately, we hope that removes IT challenges for you, our client, so that you can be focused on serving your clients and being more adaptable to the other business challenges that we all inevitably face as organizations. Together, we want to make IT easy, and our clients can achieve 4 times more value and productivity from their IT investments by following our strategic IT plan. If you'd like to talk more about that, please raise your hand. We'd love to have a conversation about how that might work for you or apply to your organization. But I know that's not why you're here today. So let's dig in to why ransomware threatens even the smallest businesses. First of all, we're going to talk today, this is a little bit of overview agenda. Let's presume breach. One of the things that we've been talking about for several years now is we've taken the approach, and we recommend that people take the approach that you should presume that someday this is going to happen. So we're going to talk about that, and we'll tell you a couple of illustrations as to why we believe that, and what you can do about it. We're going to talk a little bit about, again, going a little bit deeper into paying the ransom, why it's a bad idea. We'll explain that with some backed up support from some federal security agencies that we'll reference. And then we're going to talk about, well, what can you do to enable recovery? Again, we specifically say to enable recovery because we believe that at some point it's nearly an inevitability that people are going to get caught in some sort of an attack, and position yourselves to be able to recover as quickly as possible. And then we'll open up for next steps and some questions at the end. Please, in the meantime, if there's any questions, post them in the Q&A. Stephanie's already posted a couple comments in there, like subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you happen to be watching this online, or if you're watching it live, please go ahead and do that. We'd love to have you subscribe. That's where we post all of our educational content. And if you have any questions, please introduce them. Stephanie might be able to answer them offline, or we'll open it up at the end and address them. So please enter those at any time. All right, let's start. Presume breach and don't pay the ransom. All right, here's why. First of all, there is no system that is 100% secure, unless it's not connected to any other system and isn't connected to the network or to the internet. And even then, that's probably not going to be very effective. So effectively for the business world today, even at home, but we're going to be talking about businesses today, why there's really no 100% secure system. So let's illustrate that by a couple stories that I've heard personally from different security experts that I've had the pleasure of being able to hear from or speak with. The first one is someone that you might know, Kevin Mitnick. Kevin is pretty well-renowned hacker, where he did a lot of hacking back in the phone hacking and doing free long-distance calling, kind of hacking some of those systems. He did get arrested in 1995. That's what he's most famous for. He did a stint in prison and has come back and is now a security consultant. Seems to be the path that a lot of old hackers used to follow. But one of the things, I was at an event where Kevin Mitnick was speaking, and he gets hired now to break into systems and secure breakthrough security. One of the things he mentioned is that he has 100% success rate, in particular if social engineering is an available option to break in. So that's one of the things that I thought. He has a lot of success rate outside of that, but he said I have 100% success rate if social engineering is one of the options I have available to me to breach a system. Secondly, we've had the privilege of being able to work beside and with some former NSA cyber warfare operatives, and arguably one of the world's top best, or some of the world's top best ethical hackers. And one of the things that they found is that in trying to protect different businesses from attacks like ransomware, is they basically did an experiment. They tried to have hackers hack each other and at the same time try and prevent other hackers from hacking them. In the end, what they found in this experiment is that they couldn't stop anyone from getting in. They couldn't stop it. So we've come to the conclusion, for just with these couple examples and just mere statistical analysis of information, is that you should presume breach, and you should presume that at some point this is going to happen to you. Doesn't mean you should throw your hands up not doing anything. However, it just does mean that we want to take the approach, and we try and take the posture with our clients and with how we roll out our security and all our backups, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, that you're going to get breached because there's no organization, including us, that can guarantee that something is never going to happen. All right, so let's talk about some of the 4 nets and the 1 harpoon. The reason why we call it that is the ransomware attack vectors. I tried to throw a nice picture of a net, even though that's probably not how you're going to feel if something like this happens to you, because that looks like a nice serene picture there. But internet-facing vulnerabilities and misconfiguration. This comes right off the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA.gov. This comes out of one of the reports that they put out, which actually is a reference that we're going to share with all of you in our follow-up email. We'll have several references relative to all this content in case you'd like to check some facts or get some additional information that might help you down this path and on your journey. But we found that, or they noted that just internet-facing vulnerabilities. So, for instance, this might mean that your firewall's password isn't reset from the default standard. It could be that you have a device that's on the internet that has a vulnerability, like the Exchange vulnerability that happened earlier this year, or some of the VMware vulnerabilities. There's vulnerabilities as far as, just because software is written by human beings, firmware is written by human beings, and that's why everything gets updated, is because there's vulnerabilities. It's just whether or not they get exploited. The other thing that happens very commonly, though, too, is that things are misconfigured. So where if, for instance, if you still have what's called remote desktop protocol, RDP, if you still have that open to the internet, chances are you've already been hacked, because that is one that's been well known out there and that gets exploited is basically within days, oftentimes, if that's out there. So a lot of people have that turned off, but that's an example of, it's a technology that's out there. If it gets misconfigured or not configured correctly, even though there's not necessarily a vulnerability, quote unquote, in the software, a bug in the software, it makes you vulnerable to any of these types of attacks. The reason why I put these first in the order here is because all of the first ones are this widespread net. So if you're on the internet, hackers or bad actors might throw this net of trying to take advantage of known vulnerabilities or known misconfigurations that exist in any technology that you might be using. They don't know that you're using that technology. They just know that this type of technology has a vulnerability. Commonly used ones like VMware and Exchange, for example. Phishing, where they try, there's just emails, basically some sort of business email compromise, where they're phishing, trying to get you click on something, trying to put your credentials in somewhere to gain access to your systems. Again, they're rarely, it's not that you couldn't be targeted with phishing, but in general, phishing is just a big, huge net that's being cast through any emails that have been, captured through systems that have been hacked, or getting your emails on different portals. Again, I'm sure you're aware of phishing. I'm not trying to explain phishing to you, just trying to say that this is one of the common vectors from which ransomware attacks, and it's not a targeted attack. This is a widespread net that gets thrown out on the internet and via email with bad actors. Malware infections, again, the same kind of thing. You might click on an email. It could be something that you go to a website that is compromised and you could download malware. It could be that you're clicking to install some piece of software. It could be watching a YouTube video, actually. YouTube, sometimes hackers or bad actors will take a popular viral video and embed or copy it and inject bad software. Or malware that might infect your machine. Again, these are all, they're not targeting you, they're not targeting your business. It's just something that it's just the day-to-day things that you might be doing or anyone on your team might be doing could get infected just by, using the internet, clicking on emails, etc. Another one that's not, that's just a big net is a third party. And yes, I'm actually calling it out very directly here, managed services providers. That's what we do. There's a lot of companies like us out there, and bad actors know that the managed services provider industry exists, and they know that getting access to our systems might get them access to lots of other organizations. And that's not through a managed services provider, but third party. That's how Target got breached many years ago, is it was through a third party vendor that they work with. So again, they're not attacking you. This is just a big net, or they might be targeting people with whom you work that are bigger. Like if you have bigger clients or bigger customers, maybe they are a target, but through them you might be hit as well. So again, these are just big nets that are cast where you might be vulnerable. And finally, I put the little asterisk because the first four that I mentioned are the ones that were in the report, the findings from the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA. But the last one, that's why I put a little asterisk there, is social engineering. So social engineering, which we're also going to be doing a session on, I believe in September, maybe August, September, I'm not sure which, but we're doing a session on social engineering about how to avoid that, how to teach your team to be aware of social engineering. But social engineering is mainly the primary way in which you might be targeted. They might, bad actors might look for you because there's data that you have. They might find one of your team members that are out there from LinkedIn somehow, some way, and they might try and social engineer that person or the team members that you might have. That's where you are a target. So that's the Harpoon, and that does happen. But in general, the majority of the way and the path of least resistance is actually the 4 nets, not the Harpoon. So that's one of the things that we wanted to really make everyone aware of, is that how small businesses are vulnerable, because they're still vulnerable to the nets, even though they're unlikely to get hit by a Harpoon. So if you are actually being targeted, although it does happen, we have seen it happen. Okay, so those are some of the ransomware attack vectors, and just kind of make you aware of how widespread this is, and typically how bad actors go about trying to deploy their ransomware and exfiltrate data. Let's move on to why paying the ransom will not help. So there's several different reasons. One, you could violate, I don't know if you are aware of this, but the Treasury, the Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, the OFAC office, basically has put an advisory out there that oftentimes paying a ransom is funding foreign bad actors, foreign criminals, foreign terrorism, and so they actually have it that you could be sanctioned by the Department of the Treasury if you actually pay a ransom. That's one of the links and references that we're going to be sending along, and I have it there at the bottom. Obviously, you can't click on it on the screen, but we'll share that with you. The other thing is, by paying the ransom, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to get your data back, because, I mean, let's face it, we're talking with, these are criminals, these are bad actors, and their goal is to get money, not necessarily to help you recover. Now, there are actually known ransomware groups that are out there that if you pay, they are likely to give you the encryption key that will allow you to decrypt and recover all your data, but that still doesn't guarantee that you're going to get your data back. There's also some evidence as far as the ransomware prevention and response that was published by the FBI, which is a resource we'll provide. There's a couple bullets that they put in there. It says some victims who paid the demand were targeted again by cyber actors. And after paying the originally demanded ransom, some victims were asked to pay more to actually get the promised decryption key. So if you pay a little, they might not give you the decryption key and ask you to pay more. So there's actually multiple examples of where either paying it doesn't get you the encryption key, paying it makes you another target, or paying it, they just ask you to pay more to get it. So that's another reason why paying the ransom oftentimes will not help and is a bad idea. Let's say you do get the encryption key, and let's say you do actually are able to restore some of your data, you still need to rebuild. One of the problems of ransomware and the way this works is that oftentimes the encryption of your information is covering the tracks of what the bad actors did. So they've already been in your, oftentimes they've already been in your system. They might have already found the data that they want, taken the information that they want, and then they say, oh, we're just going to do a nice little encryption command here at the end to cover my tracks. So the problem is that if your laptops and servers and or laptops, desktops and or servers get encrypted, is that you don't know what they did. You don't know if they left any footholds behind. You don't know if they're still in your environment. This is how some people get targeted again immediately after they've paid the ransom, is because they didn't actually rebuild the environment. So you need to make sure, even if you get hit with ransomware, you basically need to rebuild all of your machines, reinstall fresh images, reinstall your servers, all that, and then recover data. So even if you do pay the ransom, you still have to rebuild. Just if you have a copy of your data, then it'll just be faster for recovery. Again, finally, if you pay the ransom, as I mentioned, it can make you a target. Basically, they know that you've paid the ransom before, and there's again, the FBI said, I remember seeing a statistic about it, so I'm not going to mention, but there's a certain percentage that oftentimes if you pay the ransom, they end up getting ransomed again. So look, we want to get you in the position to not pay the ransom. We want to get in your position so you don't have to make that tough decision and deal with that possibility. So let's move on to what can and should you do. Okay. A few years ago, actually been about 3.5 years, 4 years ago, when we were looking at what was going on in the industry, and I'm just speaking on behalf of MyTech, and how the threats were evolving and advancing very rapidly. And so the old security that used to be in place, layered security has been a thing, meaning people have been telling you for at least a couple decades that you should have layered security. So, but for the last 20 years, or go back a few years, 20 years prior to that, it was a firewall, spam filter, and antivirus. And maybe make sure you did your patching. So those are kind of the 4 common things that if you did those things, you're good. You were most likely taken care of, and you most likely didn't have a problem with security for the most part. That's no longer good enough because bad actors have learned to get around firewalls, have learned to get around your antivirus, have learned to get around all those things. And so it doesn't mean you shouldn't do those. It just means that you need to do those and others. So there's some additional prevention and security controls that you should have in place. And if you don't, this is one of the things we'd recommend you check out. So first of all, multi-factor authentication. If you don't have that turned on for your organization today, you really need to investigate turning that on. We can help you with that. Microsoft, it's built into some of the licensing with Microsoft 365 so that you can turn those things on. So that's a really big one. I don't need to dig into that too deep. I'll touch on that about cyber insurance a little bit later, but turn that on. Managed endpoint detection and response. It's basically a tool that if things get by your antivirus, this tool is designed to target and find the stuff that gets past your antivirus. So it's not antivirus, but it's complementary to what your antivirus and anti-malware software does. Another one that we recommend is endpoint DNS security. The reason why we recommend that, it's like the phone book of the internet. And imagine that, if you were, because you get spam calls on your cell phone, but imagine that if you had DNS can basically say that is a bad, and you get it actually says spam, but imagine it just blocked it and said, hey, you can't call that number or that number can't call you. That's basically what endpoint DNS does for your laptop. So if you try and click on a link and it goes to a site that's known bad, it'll actually block you from going there. So and it works dynamically behind the scenes too. So endpoint DNS security is one of the ones that we strongly recommend. The other reason I'm going to bundle those two together really quick, in addition to the security awareness training and simulated phishing, those 3 items are ones that are very specifically targeting and trying to protect the end user when they're wherever they are, right? Because in the last couple of years, in the last year and a half in particular, people have been at home, or they've been not at hotels, at conferences, but we're coming back to being at hotels and conferences or coffee shops and those kind of things. And so these protections are actually deployed at the endpoint, and so they protect your laptop or your laptop when you're not sitting behind the corporate firewall. That's why those are really important and valuable and offer extra security. Again, security awareness training and simulated phishing. getting your team to learn what not to click on and how to recognize phishing is a huge layer of control that can help you mitigate ransomware attacks or any other type of security attacks. Keeping systems updated regularly. So I want to hit on that one in particular because I generically said all systems. That is your servers, that is your workstations, it's your desktops, it's your applications, it's your firewalls, it's your switches, it's anything that has any type of firmware or software or operating system. All of those things need to be kept up to date on a regular basis, your third-party applications, et cetera. Because ultimately, those vulnerabilities that we talked about, the very first thing that CISA noted was your typical vulnerability vector is just vulnerabilities in software. And so if those things aren't kept up to date, then you're at risk. That also includes getting rid of old software or old equipment. If the equipment or software can't be updated, it's vulnerable, I promise you. And don't just take my word for it. That's what FBI and CISA and other organizations will recommend. Those are some of the biggest vulnerabilities and some of the biggest risks for your organization. So if you're using an old software that isn't supported anymore, doesn't have any updates anymore, you should actively be developing a plan to move off of that software, find a different one, update it, whatever that takes, but keep everything up to date and get rid of stuff that you can no longer keep up to date because it creates vulnerability for you. Now I want to hit on network segmentation. That's one, generically referring it as network segmentation, but I'll give you a couple examples. One of the examples that came out, I read this article earlier this year that I think is a funny example, is that the headline was, casino gets hacked through fish tank thermometer. Like, okay, that's interesting. So I read down a little bit, and the fish tank thermometer, it's an IoT device. So it has it's literally attached to a fish tank, but it has a wireless signal that connects to the wireless network of the casino, this particular casino. And so somehow a bad actor, because oftentimes a fish tank thermometer, do you update your fish tank thermometer? You should, but maybe the manufacturer doesn't even do that. Maybe there's no way to lock it down. But the bad actor got into the fish tank thermometer and threw that onto the wireless network. And because the casino had not segmented their network, they were able to get right onto the backbone of the casino's environment. So there are some simple things they could have done either in the wireless configuration or the switching configuration to create some segmentation and some separation that could have prevented that bad actor from actually getting, they might have been able to get to the fish tank thermometer, but they wouldn't have been able to do anything else. So that's an example. Another one that has definitely been top of mind in the last year and a half is that do not let home computers access the corporate network. Don't let them come into the office, and don't let them access your VPN, because if you have them accessing, you don't know what is on that home device. You don't have the security controls on home device that you have on your corporate devices. So that's another example of segmentation, of not allowing certain devices to connect to your corporate environment. Finally, is just make sure you have good backups. We're going to talk more about that next, so I won't go deep here, but making sure that you have, and backups plural, because there are multiple layers that you should be considering there too. So the prevention and security controls, there's a lot more that you can do. And if there's some security experts listening either now or in the future, they're saying, well, what about this and this other thing and all these other variables? Yes, there are lots of other variables. But if you aren't doing these things, these are some of the things that can exponentially increase your security posture by making sure you have these things in place. There's much more you can do, but these are the top ones that if you're not doing them, we would recommend to mitigate a ransomware incident. So let's now talk about backups. All right, backup, and test your backup. Again, backups are important. That's stating the obvious, but what backups you have really matter. Do you have your servers backed up, your desktops and laptops backed up? What about your Microsoft 365 instances backed up? Can you restore your switch or your wireless configurations if those ever got hacked or had a problem? Those are the different kind of backups that we recommend having in place so that you can recover no matter what happens to your environment. Also, how your backups are configured matters even more. I'll give you a couple examples. One, we actually got a call from an organization that had recently been hit with ransomware, was not a client, is not a client. And they basically had a backup, except the backup was an external USB hard drive that had been just physically attached to the server. And so guess what happened? When their server got encrypted and all their desktops and laptops got encrypted, so did their backup. So they weren't able to recover. And then guess what? The offline copy was also encrypted. So this organization, while they had a backup, it wasn't configured to mitigate the risk of ransomware. And so their backup got ransomed too. So their only option was to recover, restore, rebuild, not recover, restore, because they didn't have the ability to. They had to rebuild everything from scratch. And this was a small organization, only about 25, 30 people, and it took them weeks. Again, think about being down for weeks and how that might impact you. So how your backups are configured matters. Another example that came out of the recent Kaseya attack, if you're familiar with that happened on July 2nd of this year, is that one of the providers that got hit, or one of the IT providers or solution providers that got hit, they stored their encryption keys, which is what they need to be able to recover the backups, the offsite backups. They were there, great, but the encryption keys that they needed to recover them were actually on their main server. They, guess what, got encrypted. And so they couldn't access the decrypt keys in order to recover themselves or their clients. So again, being able to have your backups configured in a way where you have segmentation, as I mentioned earlier, make sure that there's some separation between your production environment and the backup environment. Make sure that that also goes off-site. So let's say even if someone can get, if one of the bad actors can get to your local backup, make sure it goes off-site, and make sure your decrypt or encryption keys are kept in a secure location outside of your server environment or your backup environment, so that they can't get breached as well. So in order for someone to actually get you, they'd have to breach multiple systems that are separated systems, completely distinct systems, all at the same time, which is not impossible, but highly, highly unlikely. Again, so how your backups are configured matters more than just what backups you have. The other thing that we have heard from people, we've talked to some folks who have been hit by some ransomware attacks, the recent ones in particular. None of our clients have, fortunately, but peers of ours and folks that we know, is know how fast you can recover from your backups. So run a simulation or talk through a simulation. If this happened, if ransomware encrypted everything in your entire environment, what would you do and how fast would it take you to recover? And understand what that looks like, and is that good enough? Because if it's good enough, great, keep doing what you're doing. If it's not good enough, then you can at least evaluate some change in what you might need to put in place moving forward. And then lastly, relative to knowing how fast you can recover from your backups, have you actually tested that? Take a look at it and make sure that you can actually recover in the way that you think you can recover. And we recommend testing that at whatever frequency makes most sense. It could be annually, semi-annually, or maybe even quarterly, depending on what your desire, or if you have any other regulatory requirements that might ask you to do so. Okay, again, we could go on so much longer about backups, but those are the key things that we have found and we've learned to advise folks about helping this to mitigate against ransomware. This is one of the last items, which is, I say, review, update, or put in place, ... have an information security assessment and roadmap. If you don't know where you are, if you're not sure where to start, if you're not sure what your vulnerabilities are, or if you want to build a plan as far as what should I be doing incrementally, because no business can solve every problem at the same time. But if you want to understand where you're at, build a baseline, and then a roadmap as far as what are the things you can do to mitigate against these risks and put your business in the best position to recover in the event of a ransomware incident. Do an information security assessment and build a roadmap out of that. We do those for our clients. We can do those for folks that are not currently clients, so we can do them alone and just help you wherever you're at. That's something that we strongly recommend, regardless of what industry you're in. But if you are trying to figure this out and trying to put your company in the best position to not be hit or to be able to recover, do an information security assessment and build a security roadmap so you can put some of these things in place. We strongly recommend that if you don't have a cyber insurance policy, or even if you do have a cyber insurance policy, look into getting one or review what you've got, because it might not be, like for instance, the recent attacks, it was the recent Kaseya attack that was on January 2nd, or July 2nd, excuse me. It was a third-party software through a third-party vendor that then attacked some of these companies. Does your insurance cover against that? They might say, no, that's their problem. And they might leave you in the lurch because that's not their problem. It was a third party. You got to go to them. So a colleague of mine advised me recently, I thought was a good little tip, is that don't put your recovery in the hands of somebody else. So know what your recovery is, know what your recovery requirements are. And one of the pieces that can really help you recover is a cyber insurance policy that has appropriate plans and underwriting in place. A little asterisk public service announcement relative to cyber insurance. As I promised I'd mention earlier about multi-factor authentication. We are hearing from insurance providers, if you're going through a cyber insurance application or policy review, that you either will not be approved or they will not grant a renewal if you do not have multi-factor authentication in place. It used to be that if you're in the plans or working on or have a expectation to put MFA in place, that they might underwrite you. But at this point, we're hearing from, again, because a lot of our clients, we collaborate with them on this, with their insurance provider, and then we help them answer questionnaires about to figure out their cyber insurance policy, is that if you don't have MFA in place, again, multi-factor authentication, you are not going to be covered. So if you have a renewal coming up, use that as a deadline or try and get that done. Or if you're trying to think about putting a cyber insurance policy in place, you're most likely going to have to put MFA in place first. Now, again, I'm not an insurance advisor, so I can't tell you that's definitively the case, but that is what we are hearing from a lot of different insurance carriers that we work with on behalf of our clients and with our clients. Finally, if you don't have some sort of incident response plan, which most organizations don't, even if you have one, it's probably worth revisiting and updating. Because if you're in the midst of a ransomware incident, in the midst of a ransomware attack, you don't want to be figuring out your response plan at that moment. You want to already have at least something in place. It might even just mean, even if you have all the right protections in place, and even if you have the backups from which you can recover, it's going to take you some time to recover. And in that time, you're probably going to want to communicate with your team, communicate with your clients or customers, communicate with your vendors. There's probably going to be, and maybe you want to talk to your cyber insurance provider, maybe you want to talk to the FBI, or maybe you want to talk to your attorney. Get that all figured out so that you don't have to be trying to figure that out in the midst of an attack. So even if it's just a basic one-pager, and by the way, keep that somewhere other than a device that might be encrypted in the event of a ransomware attack. So those are 3 things we recommend having in place. And then last thing really quick, forgive me about the incident response plan as it relates to cyber insurance, is that sometimes your cyber insurance policy will prescribe or mandate or dictate how you choose to recover from a ransomware incident. Like for instance, let's say if you're our client and you got hit with ransomware, your cyber policy might preclude us from being able to do any recovery work or any work on your system. They might require you to get their chosen provider, internal IT or external partner, IT partner involved to be able to recover, investigate, and handle any type of the ransomware payments or negotiations if that's where you choose to go. So just be aware of that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that those are some of the things that in your incident response plan you'd want to be aware of so you don't accidentally step on the toes of your insurance carrier and then maybe mitigate some of the insurance coverage that you have. Okay. So with all that said, what are the 4 steps you can do to mitigate the impact of a ransomware incident? And I chose those words really carefully. 4 steps to mitigate the impact of a ransomware incident, because again, we are presuming that at some day in the future, we are all going to suffer from something like this. And so what are the things you can do to put yourself in the best position to be able to mitigate the overall impact of that event? 1, get multi-factor authentication in place now if you don't. 2, review your security capabilities. Those advanced items that I mentioned, like manage endpoint detection and response, endpoint DNS, and security awareness training with simulated phishing. If you don't have those things in place, ask your provider, reach out to us. We can help you get those things in place. Investigate your current backup disaster recovery solution. Make sure that it has some of those segmentation and protections in place that would mitigate against ransomware, so that if you do get ransomware, your backups also are not getting encrypted at the same time, or you'll be able to recover from them. Finally, ask for help from your trusted advisors. And I don't just mean technical. I mean your insurance. Look at cyber insurance. Talk to legal and talk to your technical professional trusted advisors to help you figure out how you can build a response and build a plan to mitigate the impact of a ransomware incident. All right. That is pretty much it for today. I really would like to say thank you for joining us. Please like us or follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, share some of these. If this is something that's value and you think someone else can benefit from it internally or externally, please share this with a colleague. We'd really appreciate it. You know, we know that we can't help everybody, but if there's any nuggets of information in here that could help you think through a plan that could help you put yourself in a better position, please share it. We'd really appreciate it. Join us for future events at mytech.com/events. And for those of you who have watched our Microsoft 365 Teams and SharePoint Power users, we have those every other month. And so please join us for those as well. With that said, thank you so much for attending either live or watching after the fact. And I would like to ask everyone to be secure and stay productive. Stephanie, let's open it up for questions.
Thanks, Nate. We did just have a question come through here. It says, in your intro comment, presume breach, expect this to happen. Mm-hmm. It's terribly sobering. How can we, as a healthcare company make that work when compared to requirements such as HIPAA and the implications there are notifications when breached?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. In fact, what oftentimes comes to mind when I think about regulated industries, so HIPAA, medical and HIPAA is one of them. There are others out there, but being compliant, i.e. sometimes being compliant means people just check the boxes, does not, and I'm not saying that's you, does not necessarily equate to security. So they need to go hand in hand because your security needs to help check those boxes, but you need to choose what you feel is right to mitigate the risks for you. So one of the things that we strongly recommend, especially in any regulated industry, so medical industry in particular, we would recommend this, is that information security assessment that gives you a big snapshot. Again, it's probably an oxymoron the way I said that. It gives you basically a big plan, a lot of information as far as where you're vulnerable. And in fact, one of the things that is recommended from this to help mitigate against if you get breached HIPAA-wise, and how can you mitigate your liability? Well, one of the ways that we've been advised, and we've heard it play out in court proceedings, is that having a plan and showing evidence of working on that plan basically demonstrates that you are not grossly negligent. Because a lot of times contracts and penalties are based on gross negligence. So are you doing your part to help protect your systems, to help protect your clients and patients and their data? And do you demonstrate that you're doing that? So again, you can't just do an assessment and then do nothing. But if you're taking the precautions and you're following a plan, you're building a plan and making incremental progress on that plan. And if there's something on your plan, and hypothetically speaking, let's say you did get breached and it was something that was on your plan, you just hadn't gotten to it yet, and you can demonstrate, hey, look, here's our plan. We can't solve every problem at the same time. So we just hadn't gotten to that one yet. And so, at least demonstrates that you're not grossly negligent. You're still going to have to notify most likely in that incident, but at least it's something that your fines and penalties that you may also incur in an event like that is something that can be mitigated. The other thing that I would say relative to the security measures that I mentioned, and there's others out there, but the key ones that I mentioned is that an analogy that our security assessor likes to use is build a bigger fence. So if your fence is 15 foot tall and your neighbor's fence is only 5 foot tall, the neighbor's an easier target, right? So they're most likely going to get caught up in that net faster than you are. So those are some of the things you can do to mitigate against it. And we've been able to help effectively stop ransomware incidents from even encrypting systems with some of those tools, and some of those tools are capable of doing that. So it's probably a longer answer than you wanted, and probably worthy of a lot more offline conversation, which we'd be happy to have. But I think the key things are put some extra pieces in place, especially if you're in a regulated industry like medical, absolutely have an information security assessment and a roadmap so you can demonstrate that you're working on a plan to mitigate against the risks and do your due diligence to protect your clients and patient data.
Thank you, Nate. There are no questions at this time.
All right. Well, again, I appreciate everyone watching, and I can't. This is a ransomware isn't new. But what is new is the cyber insurance aspect to it. So you're going to start seeing, President Biden put in some goals. There's a stopransomware.gov site. There's a lot of activity around this to try and help businesses protect themselves from ransomware. And so, and the insurance industry is also starting to put some requirements in place, like I mentioned, with like not even underwriting you with a policy unless you have MFA in place. So there's a lot going on with this, and that's also why I say, look, raise your hand. If there's anything, if you're not sure, it doesn't have to be us. Talk to your provider, talk to your internal IT person. If you're not getting the answer you want, talk to somebody else, whether it's your legal insurance provider or MyTech. We'd be happy to have a conversation and talk to you about what we do to help protect our clients and what we would recommend based on where you're at. So again, thank you all very much. Again, be secure and stay productive.